This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, I'm Angela Lim. And tonight's top stories from East Asia. A close shave for Japan. Its economy narrowly avoids a technical recession. But a weaker than expected growth rebound adds fresh pressure on Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. And Tokyo files a protest with Beijing over top diplomat Wang Yi's accusation that it is returning to militarism. Simmering tensions between both countries on display at a major security conference over the weekend. And also in Japan, power transmission restarts at TEPCO's Kashiwazaki-Kariwa nuclear power plant after 14 years in a trial. It's part of a move to bring more nuclear reactors online. And North Korean leader Kim Jong Un unveils a housing development for the families of soldiers killed while supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. And also on the bulletin, we examine the global impact of China's soft power push and how its growing cultural footprint could redefine its image worldwide. Plus,
now, while I cannot draw you a horse, I can certainly write you the Chinese character for horse, which is Ma.
and we take a look at why some Malaysians are turning to traditional calligraphy for a sense of calm this Chinese New Year. Our top story tonight, Japan's economy barely returned to growth in the fourth quarter, sharply undershooting forecasts. The weak data posing an early test for Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi as cost of living pressures weigh on confidence. And for more, we have Olivia Mazuki standing by with the details. Liv?
Japan's economy managed to avoid a technical recession, but the recovery momentum wasn't as strong as expected. The advanced reading for its Q4 annualized economic print showed 0.2% growth, reversing a decline from the previous quarter, but still, it is far from the 1.6% rise expected in a Bloomberg poll. The slight expansion strengthening the case for fiscal stimulus measures from newly elected Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Consumer spending, which makes up the majority of the country's economy, only expanded by a meager 0.1%, showing the uneven state of domestic demand in the face of rising inflation. Capital spending rose 0.2%, highlighting the patchy nature of the country's economic recovery. But despite the lackluster data, analysts say that the Bank of Japan is likely to keep raising interest rates later this year. Weak momentum will keep investors focused on PM Takaichi's pledge to suspend the consumption tax, which previously roiled markets over fiscal fears in the developed world's most indebted nation. The numbers taking some heat out of the recently booming market. The Nikkei 225 there ending the day in the red after having climbed 5% last week. The Japanese yen also slipping after strong gains last week, hovering at 153.57 level to the greenback. Well, the data highlighted the challenge facing policymakers as the Bank of Japan sticks to its plan to keep raising rates and move away from years of ultra-low borrowing costs. PM Takaichi met with the BOJ governor to discuss the central bank's rate hike plans. And for more now, we are joined by CNA senior correspondent Michio Ishida, live from Tokyo. Michio, good to see you today. What we know is that PM Takaichi met with the Bank of Japan chief, Ueda, today. What did they talk about? Were there any unexpected issues raised?
Well, the Bank of Japan Governor, Mr. Kazuo Ueda, did meet with Ms. Takaichi today, and he was asked by reporters what he discussed with her. He said that they discussed a wide range of issues, including the economy and finance. A reporter asked him if Ms. Takaichi made any demands to him, and he said that she did not. Well, after the last time they met, in December, BOJ's board meeting has decided on a rate hike. And Nomura Securities, in its paper released just today, mentioned that the BOJ is likely to raise interest rate by 0.25% this June and again in December. And it says in its paper that this should stimulate the weak Japanese yen. Well, the meeting between Mr. Ueda and Mr. Takaichi was held after Japan's GDP for calendar year 2025 was released by the Cabinet Office, showing first growth in 2 years or 1.1%. And preliminary figure for October to December GDP was 0.1% compared to the previous quarter. Now, the figure was a disappointment for economists because their forecast was 1 to 2% growth. Personal consumption, which makes up close to 60% of Japan's GDP, was just 0.1%. And it's reported to reflect the weakness of purchase of food products due to the higher cost. Now, Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara said in his regular news conference, the government will implement as soon as possible the supplementary budget that has been approved, and it's mainly to deal with higher cost of living.
Now, Michio, we know that a Nikkei poll is showing that support for Ms. Takaichi's cabinet, that's holding strong after her election landslide. Do you see that lasting?
Well, various media polls were actually released, and approval rating for Takaichi's cabinet, according to Nikkei, was 69%. Asahi Shimbun was 63%, and Fuji TV 72%. Now, most media polls suggested that Takaichi's LDP won too many seats in the general election. And if you look at the breakdown of the age group, the younger electorates were more supportive of the LDP's strong majority in the lower house. Now, the most important policy for the public, according to the surveys, is about dealing with higher cost. Now, Prime Minister Takaichi has been pushing for responsible fiscal spending. And Chief Cabinet Secretary Kihara reiterated it's in the area of economic security, AI, semiconductor, investing in crisis management, and spur growth. At the same time, Mr. Kihara stressed the importance of fiscal sustainability. Now, economists say for the public, it's whether Ms. Takaichi's economic policy will help raise wages to beat the higher cost of living. The next major election is the upper house election in 2028. And she has time before that, to see whether she can actually act and perform and spur the economy. But there are local elections in between, and the Japanese public can express their approval or disapproval towards the Takaichi cabinet.
Michio, thank you so much for that update. There was CNA's senior correspondent Michio Ishida, live from Tokyo. Now, Japan has lodged a protest with China today in response to Chinese top diplomat Wang Yi's accusation that Tokyo was returning to militarism. At the Munich Security Conference over the weekend, Mr. Wang had invoked Japan's World War II history as he warned Japanese leader Sanae Takaichi against a return to what Beijing views as the country's past aggression.
因见不远，不得不察呀。当年日本就是以同样的借口，就是所谓的危机存亡事态，对中国发动了侵略，对珍珠港发动了袭击啊！如果不思悔改的话，势必会重蹈覆辙，这是历史的规律。
Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara today pushed back against Mr. Wang's assertion, saying Tokyo has been consistent in its contribution to the peace and stability of the international community since the end of World War II. Mr. Kihara's comments follow earlier responses by the Japanese Foreign Ministry, which also swiftly rejected Wang's remarks. Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi said the Chinese top diplomat's comments were, I quote, not based on facts. Tensions between China and Japan have been simmering since November, when Prime Minister Takaichi said a Chinese invasion of Taiwan could constitute an existential threat to Japan. China says Ms. Takaichi's comments violate Chinese territorial sovereignty. Japanese utility TEPCO's Kashiwazaki-Kariwa nuclear power plant has started power generation and transmission for the first time in 14 years. The power plant is located about 220 kilometers northwest of Tokyo. The facility's number 6 unit has been running since 2:55 a.m. local time today on a trial basis, after TEPCO found no abnormalities during a test on Sunday. It will be disconnected and reconnected from the grid multiple times to boost its output gradually to its maximum level. Full-fledged transmission is expected to begin on 18th March and will supply electricity to Tokyo and its surrounding areas. The Kashiwazaki-Kariwa nuclear power plant's number 6 reactor is the first to be brought back online since meltdowns at the Fukushima Daiichi complex after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. Its revival is taking place amid the government's push to reboot nuclear power as part of its goal to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Residents who live near the facilities, however, remain concerned over potential safety issues, even as authorities are ensuring the restart will meet stringent standards. In other news, an explosion at a fireworks shop in eastern China has killed 8 people and left 2 others with minor burn injuries. Officials say the accident was caused by a resident who had improperly set off fireworks near the store, located in the Donghai County in China's Jiangsu province. Authorities say emergency services had immediately rushed to the scene and carried out rescue operations. China's Ministry of Emergency Management has called on all regions to strengthen supervision on the production and sale of fireworks. The incident comes as communities across China usher in Chinese New Year. It's a tradition across the country to celebrate by setting off fireworks, but many areas have banned the activity in recent years due to air pollution concerns. And coming up in East Asia tonight, sharp sell-offs in Chinese tech names after briefly appearing on a Pentagon blacklist of companies accused of aiding the military. But there's nothing stopping growing investor confidence in the technology offered by China's generative AI startups. More after the break. Welcome back to East Asia Tonight. And it's time now for more business news with Olivia Marzuki. Liv, fresh tensions seem to be brewing between US and China. What is happening?
Well, Angela, so apparently the Pentagon reportedly has decided to add companies like Alibaba and BYD into a list of firms with alleged ties to the Chinese military. But there's been some confusion as no official announcement has actually been made. Still, the news was enough to rattle Chinese tech stocks. Alibaba led the declines in Hong Kong, dropping over 3% at one point before paring back some of those losses. BYD and Baidu also fell, but Baidu there quickly reversed those losses to end the day in the green. Now, the updated blacklist was posted and then quickly removed from the U.S. Federal Register. It included more than 130 companies spanning AI, chip making, and EVs. While the designation carries no immediate legal weight, it acts as a red flag to U.S. investors, and it could lead to tougher trade restrictions down the line. Alibaba responded, saying, quote, "We will take all available legal action against attempts to misrepresent our company." Meanwhile, Baidu strongly denied the claim, stating that the suggestion that Baidu is a military company is entirely baseless and no evidence has been produced that would prove otherwise. The Pentagon gave no reason for putting up and pulling the list, leaving uncertainty around the future of U.S.-China tech tensions. Shares of Chinese tech startups rallying, bolstered by upgrades to their AI models. Minimax surged by 25%, rival Zhipu AI closing the day with a gain of 5%. Both stocks have jumped at least 300% since their Hong Kong listings back in January, as investors bet on China's AI boom. Zhipu AI and Minimax released their open-source models last week in a bid to grab more user traffic ahead of the Chinese New Year holiday. Zhipu also planned a secondary listing in Shanghai. Australia's Treasury Wine Estates has suspended its interim dividend after posting its biggest half-yearly loss since going public in 2011. It swung to a loss of $460 million for the 6-month period ending December, with a net revenue down 17%. The winemaker has been hit by weak demand in the U.S. and China as consumers cut back on alcohol spending amid rising living costs. Treasury says halting dividend payments will help conserve cash and reduce debt. Its shares fell by more than 5%, extending sharp losses over the past year. A Hong Kong court has dismissed a petition to liquidate Chinese property giant Country Garden weeks after the developer completed a $17.7 billion offshore debt restructuring. The petition was filed by a creditor in 2024. Country Garden, once China's largest real estate developer, reported liabilities of about $128 billion last June. Its shares continue to trade near record lows, showing little recovery since a 9-month suspension was lifted in January 2025. Chinese President Xi Jinping has signaled a clear shift in China's growth playbook, leaning harder on domestic demand as global headwinds intensify. In remarks published by the Communist Party's flagship journal, Qiushi, Mr. Xi called for boosting consumption, expanding investment, and fully tapping the power of China's vast domestic market. The comments were delivered at December's Central Economic Work Conference, which sets Beijing's economic priorities for the year ahead. Mr. Xi also pledged to improve livelihoods, stabilize investment, and lay stronger foundations for longer-term growth. The message underscores Beijing's growing determination to pivot towards consumption as pushback builds globally against China's low-cost exports and their impact on local industries. The urgency is pretty clear. Well, China's economy grew 5% last year, with record exports offsetting weak household spending and a sharp drop in investment. The country also posted a record $1.2 trillion trade surplus, despite ongoing tariff tensions with the U.S. With trade and geopolitical risks on the rise, Beijing wants consumers, rather than exports, to become the next growth engine, while continuing to bet on new and emerging industries. Tidhu Narayanan of Wells Fargo gave us his outlook for China's economy and what the key drivers would be.
On the transition towards domestic economy, towards domestic-led growth, the administration in China has been looking to have that pivot for the last few years already, probably 2021, 2022, when they started on that transition. And so far, it's been a bit of a bumpy ride. Domestic consumption, domestic sentiment has been very hit. And as you rightly pointed out, the property market weakness is a key ingredient in that. As long as there is still softness in the real estate market and the property market, that has been weighing down on sentiment and that has impeded the domestic consumption story. We think that near term, there is still a lot of weakness in the China economy. It's going to take a long while for a complete transition to happen. It will have to be fueled by fiscal support from the central government. Monetary policy support is a little like pushing on a string. There hasn't really been too much uptake. We saw that with the most recent credit growth data as well. So the onus is on the central government to deliver fiscal policy. And in the absence of that, we think growth will still remain a little subdued. Nothing to be worried about. Growth will still remain soft, but not collapsing. Neither do we expect a sharp rebound in the near term.
And that's pretty much all I have for now, Angela. It's back to you. Happy Chinese New Year.
Thank you so much, Liz. Happy New Year to you as well. Now, in other news, French President Emmanuel Macron is among several heads of state and policymakers set to attend India's AI Summit, an event that will see Chinese representation for the first time. Mr. Macron's visit comes as the two countries deepen cooperation in areas including defense, critical minerals, and high-tech manufacturing. Ishan Garg filed this report for CNA from New Delhi.
For New Delhi, President Emmanuel Macron's three-day visit is more than just another high-level diplomatic engagement. It's a chance to lock in France as a long-term, like-minded technology and security partner at a time of growing global uncertainty. Officials say that the two leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Emmanuel Macron, will review progress on their strategic partnership and look to give fresh momentum to big-ticket defense, energy and digital projects under their Horizon 2047 roadmap. At the heart of the visit is the AI Impact Summit in New Delhi. President Macron and Prime Minister Narendra Modi are likely to push for joint research, common standards on trustworthy artificial intelligence and tighter cooperation between French and Indian tech companies. An agreement to boost cooperation in the field of critical minerals could also be on the cards as both countries look for alternatives to Chinese supply.
Because of the nature of trust that we have and the kind of relationship that India and France enjoy, it is but natural that we will seek to cooperate in the area of critical minerals, as we will in advanced areas of green energy transition or semiconductors or artificial intelligence, the building blocks of our new age.
Defense will be another major pillar of talks. France is already one of India's key arms supplier, from Rafale fighter jets to Scorpion submarines, and now New Delhi is weighing a proposal to buy 114 more Rafales to modernize its air force, with a large chunk to be built in India under its Make in India push.
France is willing to transfer technology and create a defense industrial base in India, which is perhaps unmatched by anyone else. I can say that in some of the most advanced areas like aircraft engine, they are willing to provide 100% TOT, and besides helping us learn the ropes of design and development.
TOT, or Transfer of Technology Agreements, analysts say are a sign of ingrained trust in Delhi-Paris ties. They say India sees France, with territories and military assets in the Indian Ocean, as a rare European power willing to back its vision of a multipolar Asia, while Paris increasingly views New Delhi as a key partner in diversifying away from over-dependence on China. As the red carpet is rolled out in the Indian capital this week, the real test will be whether ambitious slogans like Horizon 2047 can translate into contracts, jobs and joint projects on the ground. For now, Macron's visit and his presence at a flagship AI summit in New Delhi is being seen as a sign that in a fractured world, India and France are doubling down on their bets on each other. For CNA, I'm Ishan Garg in New Delhi.
And coming up on East Asia tonight, a look into China's soft power push and how the country's growing cultural footprint is shaping global perceptions. We'll get insights from Dr Carwyn Morris, who is a senior lecturer in digital society and geography at SOAS University of London, in just a moment. Stay with us. This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. Japan's economy returned to growth in the final quarter of 2025, but the rebound fell short of expectations, missing forecasts and adding fresh pressure on Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. Tokyo fires back at Beijing after China accused Japan of reviving militarism over its Taiwan stance, lodging a formal protest, warning that relations could fray further. And TEPCO trials power generation at its Kashiwazaki-Kariwa nuclear plant, the first time since the Fukushima disaster, marking a key step towards a broader restart of nuclear energy in Japan. The strengthening of China's soft power has been a central priority for Beijing for more than a decade. It's backed by substantial spending on a wide array of initiatives designed to shape global perceptions of its development model and governance system. Now, traditionally, these efforts have been led from the top down, driven largely by the state. Chief among them is Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, a vast network of infrastructure and economic investments spanning dozens of countries, widely seen as central to Chinese foreign policy. Now, China has also promoted its language and culture through Confucius Institutes at universities worldwide. But these centers have had their share of controversy. Many have closed in Western countries, and concerns over political influence. In recent years, China's soft power has taken on a new dimension, partly through its cultural exports. Examples include growing international interest in Chinese films and animated features that have enjoyed record-breaking box office success at home. Now, video games such as Black Myth Wukong, rooted in Chinese mythology and storytelling, generated a worldwide buzz and signaled the rise of big-budget titles from China. Pop culture also played a role. The quirky Labubu dolls, produced by Chinese toy company Pop Mart, became a global sensation. It sparked long queues at its stores and even fueled a massive resale market, which has since cooled. And trending on Western social media now is the phenomenon dubbed China Maxing. Online videos, often posted by Gen Z users, show young Westerners joking that they are becoming Chinese. Clips range from sipping warm water to practicing Tai Chi to padding around at home in slippers. Many describe themselves as entering a, quote, a very Chinese phase in one's life. Chinese state-run Xinhua News has taken note of the trend, saying it represents what it calls a broader positive shift in how China is perceived globally. And for more on this, we're joined by Dr. Carwyn Morris, who's a senior lecturer in digital society and geography at SOAS University of London, joining us live from London. Dr. Morris, great to have you with us. Now, for years, China's soft power meant that big state-led projects like the Belt and Road Initiative took precedence. But now it's video games, dolls, and memes as well. So has Beijing lost control of the narrative, or do you think it's actually perfected it somewhat?
I would say that over this period of time, if you want soft power to grow, you need to lose control of the narrative. And for many years, Beijing has not been okay with losing control of the narrative. In this instance, I think back to 2008 or 2005 when I first moved to China. At that period, you had Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the Olympics, Jet Li, and a lot of other things. At that period also, Chinese music, the post-rock scene and the post-punk scene was supposed to be the best in the world. And everybody had a lot of optimism for where things were going, but that eventually died down. I think what we're seeing here is, again, the allowance of cultural phenomena to go global. And Beijing, I'm not going to say they let it go global. They didn't have control over how people were consuming around the world. And I think they need to learn a lesson here to go, okay, maybe we do need to let things go. Maybe we do need to allow things to grow a bit more organically, and then we can succeed. So it's not Beijing necessarily, but Beijing is allowing it.
Yeah, and it's clearly working in their favor to some extent. This China maxing trend that we're talking about, with a young Westerner saying, it's a very Chinese time in my life. Do you think this is irony, admiration? Are we also looking potentially at the beginning of a new generational shift in the way that China is perceived all around the world?
There's definitely a change in how China's perceived. We could agree on that, I think. The cynic in me wants to say that this is just China as an aesthetic and China as a way of constructing dissatisfaction with the status quo. Here, China and the world of things emerging in China seem to be an aesthetic to have a variety of conversations about broader shifts in the world. But I think we can't just look at things cynically. We need to understand where the joy that drives them is coming from. So in my eyes, the China maxing trend also suggests what many people who have lived in or engaged with China know. China is a vibrant, exciting, at times chaotic, but always interesting place, which was once the factory of the world, but is now also a factory for the consumerist desires of a very expectant Chinese population. Domestic consumers want new things, and the manufacturers continue to provide fun, wacky, and useful trends. It is these desires that are being transferred and translated onto the world stage, with people realizing that, damn, China has that, that's kind of cool. So for me, this trend shows something very human. We're all interested in cool things and we share a common desire. It's just now we're seeing that in China that exists too.
Yeah, and earlier what you called, I guess, joy as the engine. The Xinhua news agency has called it sustained enthusiasm. But can viral things like memes, toys, games, can all of that really translate into more durable geopolitical influence? And if so, for how long?
I think that joy and these sort of joy is a really like difficult, untangible. We can't really tell why joy emerges, but joy is not easy to capture. It's not easy to produce. As I said earlier, soft power and culture require giving a little, allowing a little bit of openness. You have that in the Chinese market. You have that in China. Some people think that China is an extremely controlled society, but there's always a space for something new to emerge, for something to happen. If you want soft power, if you want this to grow, to turn into something bigger, you don't need to go, how can I reproduce this exactly as it is now? Unfortunately, that's quite a common thing, and it has been within the domestic market of China. I'm just going to reproduce what was popular already. And instead, you need to go, okay, how can I support what looks to be cool? How can I support the people who are making interesting things? If you can have that shift in mentality away from maybe a lack of confidence to cultural confidence, then you can do something really interesting, and only then can it be sustained. When I do research in places around the world, I do a lot of research in Paris. I do a lot of research in Dusseldorf in China. Dusseldorf has been having a China moment for the last 5 years. And it's a really interesting cultural sphere there. So these things can emerge, but it only happens when you give people and support people with a variety of opportunities and different sort of access to capital to create something a bit fun.
Well, let's talk a bit now about the external impacts on China's soft power, specifically the Trump 2.0 effect, right? If the US leadership becomes more inward-looking or more unpredictable, does China's image then benefit by default? Or does soft power kind of grow in relative terms here?
I think that, well, on the one hand, the world is definitely changing. And if you want my hot takes on the evolution of American power, I think we're going to need another hour. But my research around the world, so over the last 2 years, I've been to a lot of different places through a British Academy funded project where we hold workshops around the world and ask, what's happening with China in your locality? One of the things we keep seeing is that China offers to do something in a locality, let's say Argentina. We will invest in a BRI large scale project, or maybe something much more cultural as well. The US side will come over and go, can you not work with China, please? The local actor will go, sure, are you going to give us something in exchange for that so we can produce the thing that China said we can produce? The US side go, no, we're not going to give you anything, just don't work with China. And then the local side goes, okay, we're going to continue to work with China. I think this story has happened in a lot of different countries. I hear it all the time. And what you see here is a sort of US stepping back. And I don't know what's going to flow into that space. Right now, Chinese capital is flowing into that space. For this moment, Chinese cultural things are flowing into that space. So are Korean things, so are Japanese things. Maybe the next trend will be India. So there's definitely a space emerging. We just don't know exactly what will fill that space a year from now.
Well, we're seeing a lot of excitement around the world about China, but inside China, domestically, there's a lot of youth unemployment. There's also property stress coming up, economic uncertainty. So how will these realities on the ground impact the unfolding of China's soft power around the world?
Yeah, China, the thing with this story is China's a contradiction. I mean, every country is a contradiction, right? The good numbers are always balanced out with bad things, the bad experiences people have in their everyday lives. China has advanced manufacturing. It has really interesting consumption patterns, but it also has poverty and unemployment. It has a rich East and a poorer West. This is just part of that big contradiction in a very big country. You get the same contradictions in the United States as well. So yes, there is low consumer demand in some areas and economic uncertainty, but there is still a massive market where new products and consumers exist. You have brands like Samuel Guiyang in the fashion space here. Samuel Guiyang, Uma Wang, 75. They're producing expensive garments that are being gobbled up by local consumers, whilst we also hear about economic uncertainty. So all of these things exist at the same time. And China Maxing is targeting that sort of area. A meme or an online trend will never capture everything. I would say this meme does capture something, but so does 996, so does Neijuan, Involution, and so does Tangping, lying flat. We're never going to get the whole story from one meme, but I do think this meme shows us something very interesting, and it is worth to continue to explore.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morris, for sharing your thoughts with us. I've been speaking with Dr. Carwyn Morris from SOAS University of London. Now, the Chinese soft power draw is also seen in the city of Chongqing, which experienced a surge in international visitors in the past year. This story on our website, cna.asia, explains how it became a tourism hotspot. You can also find it on our mobile app. North Korean leader Kim Jong Un has toured a newly built housing district for the families of soldiers killed while supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. South Korea and Western intelligence agencies say Pyongyang has deployed thousands of troops to fight for Russia. Seoul estimates about 6,000 have been killed or wounded. State media released these photos showing Mr. Kim walking through the new development and visiting the homes of some of the families with his daughter. This comes ahead of North Korea's biggest political meeting, the ruling party Congress, scheduled to take place this month. Analysts say the apartments are a calculated political move to justify supplying Moscow with soldiers. It's believed that North Korea is receiving financial aid, military technology, food and energy supplies from Russia in exchange for deploying its troops to the front line in Ukraine. Well, this showcasing comes ahead of a major political event this month, aimed at highlighting the North Korean leader's grip on power, and also to chart the country's course for the coming 5 years. The date for the event has yet to be announced. Now, in the lead-up, Mr. Kim has toured various sites across the country, ranging from construction projects to observing missile launches to cement achievements in defense and development. The leader at the 2021 gathering had admitted to economic failures and called for a stronger, heavy industry, agriculture, and consumer good production. Some expect him to present a more defined roadmap under what some describe as a new phase of Kim Jong Un's leadership.
김정은은 이미 집권 15년 차를 맞아서 김일성, 김정일 등 선대의 그늘에서 벗어나서 본인 주도의 핵 보유 사회주의 강국 건설을 위한 정책 로드맵을 제시할 것으로 예상이 되고 있으며 김정은 시대 2.0으로의 전환을 본격화할 것으로 예상이 되고 있습니다.
Analysts believe the Congress could also spotlight succession. Seoul's intelligence agency says it is closely watching whether Kim Jong-un's daughter, Kim Ju-ae, attends Congress and whether she receives an official title. A military parade is also expected to reinforce Pyongyang's long-standing message that its nuclear status is non-negotiable.
핵과 재래식 전력을 통합해서 실제 전쟁 수행 능력이 있다는 것을 과시하는 쪽에 초점을 맞추고 있어요. 그게 이제 지난해 북한이 줄기차게 해왔던 이제 얘기들인데 올해 이제 그거를 하나의 이제 뭐랄까 체계적인 어떤 계획, 구상 이런 걸로 아마 발표할 가능성이 가장 높다. 자, 이 정도 되면은 이제는 북한 자신이 표현하듯이 불가역적, 되돌이키기 어렵다라는 것을 보여주고 싶은 거죠. 나의 핵무기 고도화는 더 이상 되돌이키기는 어렵다.
And crucially, with the US and South Korea both trying to get the North to the negotiation table, the Congress is expected to send signals to both Washington and Seoul on how Pyongyang will be conducting its diplomacy in the years ahead. And still ahead on the bulletin, a look at why some passengers in China are choosing to take the slow train home during the annual Spring Festival travel rush. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's the eve of Chinese New Year, and in China, the 40-day Spring Festival travel rush, also known as Chunyun, is nearing its halfway point. Millions are still on the move, racing home to reunite with their families and mark the festivities in what is the world's largest annual human migration. At railway stations across the country, high-speed trains glide away from platforms every few minutes, carrying thousands of passengers in comfort at top speeds of up to 350 kilometers an hour. But not everyone can afford the fastest ride. For travelers on a budget, China's slower services are the only practical option. These so-called green trains peak at about 160 kilometers an hour and make far more stops than their modern counterparts. A trip from Beijing to Shanghai, for example, can take up to 18 hours on a slow train. The fastest high-speed service covers that same distance in a little more than 4.
这个绿皮火车的话，就是我从北京到老家的话，到延吉大概得需要23个小时，中间要倒一下车，因为它现在没有直达的绿皮嘛，以前有，对，现在有直达的高铁。
These slower trains tell a different story, one of affordability. They're filled with families and migrant workers who count every yuan they earn, as well as students with modest means. As passengers settle in for the long ride, the countdown begins. But going home makes it all worthwhile. And as the year of the horse comes trotting in, senior citizens in Malaysia are exploring a traditional Chinese art form to nurture mindfulness and skill. CNA's senior correspondent Melissa Goh reports from Kuala Lumpur.
In a rapidly changing world, staying calm is key to survive and thrive. And that's according to Malaysian artist Long Tian-shi, who turned 80 this year. And he's choosing Chinese brush painting to express the spirit of the fiery horse, the zodiac animal for this Lunar New Year.
Every time when I come here, every Chinese New Year, the whole place is all Chinese doing calligraphy, and then this Chinese lunar zodiac sign. So I thought I'd try it, just for the fun. I'm a Chinese, I grew up in Chinese environment. So this is the way I'll come back to my root.
Indeed, Chinese calligraphy and traditional brush painting are gaining popularity again, especially among the elderly in Malaysia. Chinese calligraphers have been expounding the benefits of practicing this traditional art form to stay grounded in a fast-paced world.
学花鸟山水马这动物是给我们一种心平气和，不计较，不烦恼，可以很用心的去画你所要的东西，长久下去精神会很好。
当然，老年人很适合。
为什么呢？
因为当你写书法，你就必须你的心要很静的，你心不静，你那么心慌意乱，你写不出字来的。所以一个人你能够要求自己，我这个小时我不要什么都不想，我就用心的去写字，对身体健康是非常有益啦。
And it's a form of breathing exercise too, said a former headmistress. Madam Tan now teaches other senior citizens at the recreational club in the Malaysian capital of Kuala Lumpur.
当我们写字的时候啊，那个力啊，其实是我们全身的力来的，而不是只是手的力的。全身的力你运到你的手腕。
Despite having practiced the art form for decades, both Mr. Chong and Madam Tan said they're still trying to hone their skills.
所以我们做画家的如果画到一幅我们喜欢的我们内心很高兴的。
那画马最难的地方是什么呢？
马，它的结构最难画是它的那脚啊的姿态啊，它的形状结构啊，还有画出它的精神。
The toughest bit is to portray the vitality of the horses.
Showing his masterpieces, Mr. Chong hopes that more will be inspired to take up Chinese brush painting and join him in his practice.
Now, indeed, finding a work-life balance is important, and practice makes perfect. Now, while I cannot draw you a horse, I can certainly write you the Chinese character for horse, which is ma. Here's wishing everyone 马年行大运, Happy New Year.
Melissa Go, CNA, Kuala Lumpur.
And in Singapore, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong is assuring families that they remain a key priority for the government. In his Chinese New Year message, he emphasized Singapore is strong when families are strong. Nasha Rahim with more.
As some families across Singapore welcome Chinese New Year, others are preparing for the fasting month of Ramadan. Prime Minister Lawrence Wong says the coming together of such occasions is a reminder of the beauty of multicultural Singapore.
This harmony did not happen by chance. It was built over generations through mutual respect, trust, and understanding. These are values we must continue to uphold.
PM Wong adds that caring for families strengthens the bonds of society. In the recent budget, parents will receive help to defray day-to-day expenses. Some will also get more infant care and childcare subsidies. There are also plans to support parents as they navigate new challenges, such as guiding their children in using technology.
We are working to give families, especially parents with young children, greater assurance. In this year's budget, we have taken further steps, from CDC vouchers for every household to additional credits for every child and more retirement support for seniors. Our goal is clear: to give every child a good start in life, to help every senior age well, and to support families at every stage of their journey.
Beyond family ties, it's also about caring for communities.
I'm heartened to see more Singaporeans, particularly our youth, step forward to answer this call. Together we can build a society where we look out for one another and act with a strong sense of collective responsibility.
PM Wong notes the coming year of the fire horse is associated with major shifts, much like how geopolitics and technology are changing.
The fire horse also symbolizes resilience and the strength of spirit. So let us face the year ahead with adaptability and confidence, ready to reimagine what is possible for ourselves and for our country. I wish everyone a happy Chinese New Year and a year filled with good health, peace, and prosperity.
And that's this Monday's Chinese New Year Eve edition of East Asia Tonight. We'll be back on Thursday, but meanwhile, don't forget, headlines anytime at cna.asia. Plus, we're also on Facebook and YouTube. Wishing all celebrating a happy Chinese New Year, and have a good night.